Hello, Magic the Gathering Commander players. This is your girl Ivy. We're going to go ahead and do another deck construction video today. I went ahead and grabbed a new commander from the Kaldheim set. Tergrid, God of Fright. Tergrid has Menace. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under control. So you're going to see how in this deck build that I'm trying to get things to go into the graveyard a lot so I can go ahead and get it back on my side of the field. There's a lot of ways to do that, and you know, I always wanted to make a discard slash sacrifice type deck, and I had a really good vampire one back in, I want to say, about 8 or 9 years ago, which became eventually went from standard to modern legal, and it was an okay deck, but never really was there a commander deck that could really be centered around this until now. So I wanted to really create a, you know, pretty amazing deck and see what it does, you know. So we're just going to dive right in this deck and see what we've got, okay? First card we got is going to be Fleshbag Marauder. When Fleshbag Marauder enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. So obviously it comes out, and then whatever's creatures are on the battlefield get sacrificed. If you have Tergrid out, those creatures will then go straight into your battlefield. So very helpful. Sangromancer, whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may gain 3 life. So those creatures that are set into the battlefield are going to get life when they do hit the graveyard. And of course, whenever your opponent discards a card, you also gain life. So it's a great way to get some extra life gain. I'm going to give you a fair warning here. This deck is going to receive a lot of hate at the table because many of the cards are focused on all opponents. So you really have to be clearing off all the different battlefields at once with this deck, so that way you can avoid a lot of, you know, hate you're going to get at the table. You know, it's going to be a powerful deck. So the next card we have is Archon of Cruelty. It obviously flyers. Whenever Archon of Cruelty enters the battlefield or attacks, target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, discards a card, and loses 3 life. You draw a card and gain 3 life. So as you can see, this card's pretty intense. I mean, target opponent, it's got all that built onto it. So yes, it's an 8 cost, so there are ways to get a lot of mana in this deck. So if you can get up to the 8, then definitely this is the guy you want to go ahead and cast. Next card we got is Sheoldred, the Whispering one. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature. You know, even their commander. Commander comes out, it has to be sacrificed during that player's upkeep. So very helpful. This was kind of an optional ad. I decided to put him in because if there's some empty battlefields out there, you can get this guy in. He has Death Touch. When he deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. So brutal hit. I mean, if you just get him in for 1 damage, you're going to do more than 1 damage. If someone's at 40 life, they're down to 20. This guy, again, the only reason I put him in is for discard. So basically you just tap them and somebody discards 2 cards. So again, you want to be draining as many hands as you can, and especially the blue player, you want to try to get whatever is in that person's hand out of their hand. So that's definitely a good card. Next one we got is Ghoul-Drazh Spectre. He has +3/+3 as long as an opponent has no cards in hand. When he deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. Again, you're looking to try to grab some card discard there. Cackling Fiend. When Cackling Fiend comes into play, each of your opponents chooses and discards a card. So everybody at the table drops a card in their graveyard. If Tergrid's out, well, then you could get those cards. Next one we got is Ophiomancer. This is a good way to get some chump blockers on the field. At the beginning of each upkeep, if you control no snakes, put a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. It's a very good defensive card, so if somebody comes down on the ground and tries to attack you, you can block it with a Death Touch snake, it dies. Next player comes in, if they try to attack, you block it with a Death Touch snake, and it dies. You kind of see where that's going. Next one we got is Necrogoyf. Necrogoy's power is equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card. So very useful to get stuff into the graveyard and of course back onto your battlefield. Next we got, it's going to be Burglar Rat. He's just a little weenie, but you know what? With this Tergrid deck, he shines, he becomes a star. So goofy little rat, he's going to make everyone discard a card. So that could be 3 permanents that are back on your battlefield. So you never know, right? This one's a really old one. Now, granted, this is like a DCI promo version, but this is an oldie but a goodie. Goes back to, like, I think the first set of Magic, like Alpha, Beta, you know, Unlimited, that kind of stuff. When Hypnotic Spectre deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card at random. So, great for getting people to remove cards from their hand. Next we got is Screeching Buzzard. When it dies, each opponent discards a card. So, you know, you can keep attacking with them and use them as bait and see if anybody is dumb enough to block them, I guess. Flying at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card unless a target opponent sacrifices a creature or pays 3 life. So, you point at an opponent. If they're not willing to sacrifice the creature, well, they lose 3 life. That's simple. Next one we got is Blood Artist. Looks like a lot of stuff is going to be dying, going to the graveyard. You know, so if that happens, well, then you're going to be gaining some life. And you'll see why this guy could become incredibly important later on when we get to the enchantments. So, next we got is going to be Loyal Subordinate. It has Menace. It's a lieutenant at the beginning of your combat. For each turn, if you control your commander, each opponent loses 3 life. So if Tergrid's out, you have this guy out, well, your opponents are going to lose life. Very useful. Next card is another creature, Vampire Rogue. Flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink. His power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyard. So if they discard non-permanents like instants and sorceries, well, you still get this guy will get buffed because those count as card types. Next thing we got is Twilight Prophet. And this was kind of an optional ad. Again, I wanted to throw it in to see how it affects the game and what happens when you play this. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the City's Blessing, reveal the top card of your library and put it in your hand. Each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is that card's converted mana cost. So, you know, you can see where this is going. Every time you pull your upkeep, you're going to gain life if you're drawing a card. It gives you some extra, you know, it gives you some extra card draws. So, very useful in a deck like this. Gotta always have card draw in a commander deck. Next we got is Flying Sower of Discord. Enters the battlefield, choose 2 players. Whenever damage is dealt to one of the chosen players, the other chosen player also loses that much life. So you can do double damage. So anytime you target a player to deal direct damage, a different player will get damaged. Again, you're going to get a lot of hate with this deck from a table of multiple commander decks. So keep in mind, these kind of cards, you definitely need to keep those hands empty. And you also make sure to get the creatures off the battlefield as quick as possible. This one, Varagoth, Bloodsky Sire, has Death Touch. Its most ability is a tutor. Target player searches their library for a card, then shuffles their library and puts that card on top of it. So it has built-in tutor. So, you know what? That's amazing. Not going to complain. Next we got are the Planeswalkers. So, first Planeswalker is going to be Ob Nixilis. We used to call him Obby back in the day, but we'll just call him Ob Nixilis for now. You draw a card and you lose 1 life. You can destroy a target creature for -3, and if you can get him up to -8, target opponent gets an emblem with whenever a player draws a card, you lose 2 life. So that'll drain someone's life total pretty quick if you can get it up to the -8. Liliana, Waker of the Dead. Each player discards a card. Each opponent who can't loses 3 life. Target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. So you can see where this is going. You know, if you don't have Tergrid out, this is another option to start getting stuff out of graveyards. So there's going to be discarding, a lot of sacrificing occurring. So one way or another, you need to be getting cards out of a graveyard, yours or somebody else's. Next guy we got, this guy's pretty brutal. Teversat, Doom of Fools. His +2 is to create 2/0/1 black little blocker guys. Really, it looks like you just sacrifice them. You may sacrifice another creature or planeswalker. If you do, draw 2 cards, which is great in Commander. You want to be drawing cards. Then draw another card if the sacrificed permanent was a commander. Highly unlikely you're going to sacrifice your commander, but the card draw for 2 is amazing. I say, not going to hurt. Okay. He can also be a commander if you want to make him one. I've never built a deck around that guy, but you never know. Next we got is Liliana Vess. Target player discards a card. Again, useful. You just want to get cards in the graveyard. Search your library for card as tutor. Shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. It has a tutor built in. Put all creature cards and all graveyards into the battlefield under control. So if you can get it up to the -8. Again, if you don't have Tergrid out or Tergrid's commander tax is too high, well, you know what? You still have options. You always have options. Next card we got is Liliana, Death Ward General. Whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Each player sacrifices 2 creatures. Again, that's useful. You definitely want to go ahead and make sure you have sacrifice on board. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Again, you can see it's definitely on point, on theme with the deck, so you definitely want to have Lily in here. You can see why there's a lot of Lilies in here, Next one we got is going to be Liliana of the Dark Realms. Search your library for a swamp card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So she's got a built-on tutor, or I guess like a mana ramp, I suppose you could say, for black. Target creature gets +X or -X until end of turn, where X is the number of swamps you control. So you can use this to, buff or debuff a creature out there. If you can get her up to -6, hey, you know what? All your swamps tap for 4 mana. So, hey, you never know, right? Maybe you get her up to 6 and do her ultimate, and there you go. And, of course, the original, the best, the greatest, original Liliana of the Veil. Each player discards a card. Target player sacrifices a creature. Again, that's all on theme with the commander. Of course, if you get to the ultimate, separate all permanents. Target player controls into 2 piles. That player sacrifices all permanents in the pile of his or her choice. If you have Tergrid out, this is just total win. Complete and total win. Now, we're going to go ahead and start hitting up some enchantments. Let's go ahead and see how we can affect the board state and the overall game. So, first card is, this is a bit of a defensive card for black. Kind of like Ghostly Prison, but in black. But it just says, during your upkeep, tap target untapped creature control or bury it. No creature can attack you unless its controller pays an additional 2 whenever that creature attacks. So, they don't really make a lot of cards that are like Ghostly Prison for black, but this one is really pretty much right there. Next card we have No Mercy. Definitely a great defensive card. Keeps people away from... And of course, if they attack you and damage you, you can let the damage go in because the creature gets destroyed and heads to the graveyard. So, it's very useful. Next we got is the Eldest Reborn. Now, just a quick review, if you don't know what a Saga is, this card basically comes out on turn 1, which is the 1, and each one of these things occur as the each turn comes around to you. So, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Yep, you want to do that. Each opponent discards a card. Put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard under the battlefield under your control. So, very, very useful. Next 2 cards, I'm actually going to bring them out as a pair, because you got to see this. If you don't already know this sort of cheap little combo, these 2 cards, Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond. Now, it says on a Sanguine Bond, whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. Okay, I want you to think about that for a second. Now, let's switch over to Exquisite Blood. Exquisite Blood, whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So, if you get these 2 cards out, there are some tutors in here. You could auto win the game just by dealing somebody 1 damage. All their life total goes to 0 and you get all their life. So this is pretty much player death if you can see where that's going. Alright, we're going to go ahead and see, here we go, Black Market. Whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on black market. A lot of creatures are going to be leaving the battlefield, so there you go. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add black to your mana pool for each charge counter on black market. High probability you're going to get a lot of charge counters on this, so a great card to have in your 99. Phyrexian Arena, at the beginning of your upkeep, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So what? You lose a life, you get a card, so definitely extra card draw is good. Next card we have is Court of Ambition. When it enters the battlefield, become the monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life, unless they discard a card. If you're the monarch, instead, each opponent loses 6 life, unless they discard 2 cards. So you're basically building a life clock on people, unless they're going to start discarding cards. So, see where I'm going with this? You know, it really puts the vice down on people at the table. So, remember, you're going to get a lot of hate for this deck. It's pretty aggressive. So, next one we got is Revel in Riches. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, create a colorless treasure artifact creature token with sacrifice to get a mana of any color in your mana pool. What's really kind of cool is if during your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. So it gives you an alternate win condition aside from the Sanguine Bond, you know, that infinite thing. This gives you another win condition. So pretty interesting way to win if you get the 10 treasures out. There are a lot of creatures hitting the graveyard and things going there, so you can see where that's going. Now we're going to hit the sorceries. There's a lot of sorceries in here, as you can see. Target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it. It's Thoughtseize. That player discards that card. So you want to pull away someone else's tutor from them. You want to use this. You lose your life, but so what? You're getting something out of their hand that could be, you know, giving them an advantage. This one's brutal. I mean, you just dump a bunch of mana into it and just wipe out someone's hand. So then they have no cards. If they have no cards to play, well, then they can't do anything. Next one we got. Vicious Rumors. It deals 1 damage to each opponent. Each opponent discards a card, then puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. You gain 1 life. It's a giant win-win for 1 mana. It just gives you what you need in this kind of a deck. Next card we got is Arterial Flow. Each opponent discards 2 cards. You want to do that. 2 cards. That's really helpful. If you control a vampire, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Really, you want the card discard, but you might, if you want, you know, if you have a vampire out, well, then you get the bonus. So pretty useful. Sign in Blood. You know, you're probably going to sign in Blood yourself with this, but I have actually won games where somebody was down to 2 life, and I just paid the 2 mana and just knocked them off for 2 with this card. I know it's crazy, right? Just they were down to 2, so I was like, well, it does 2 damage, so sure. So I'm going to get rid of somebody. Alright, Hymn to Torok. A target player discards 2 cards at random, which is really good. You can kick out something that they've been kind of hoarding or holding on to. It's at random. If the player does not have enough cards, then their whole hand gets discarded, which I guess wouldn't that mean if they only have 1 card, then they would just discard it? Well, I don't get it. Just seems like it's common sense. It would make sense that way. Alrighty, Worst Fears. You control target player during that player's next turn. Exile Worst Fears. So basically you can use another player to attack a different player or make them sacrifice things or do really poor decisions in their gameplay. This game is a Punisher, or this card, excuse me, is an ultimate Super Punisher. Repeat the following process X times, just load it up with mana. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. You see where that's going? I mean, you could actually win games with this. Look at the X. I mean, if you piled in 5 into X, that's 15 damage, or they got to sacrifice permanents, and the sacrifice permanents go to your battlefield. So, yeah, you see where that's going? Next card we got is Skullstorm. When you cast a spell, copy it for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. Each opponent who can't loses half their life, rounded up. Again, more life drain and creature removal from the battlefield. Hey, if you need it, you got to use it. Can't not have a nuke button. You know, sometimes you just need to have a nuke button. So destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. They go to the graveyard, and some way or another, you might be able to go get something out of your graveyard again. This one, each opponent, this is great, loses X life. You gain life equal to life lost this way. So if you have the whole table attacking you and you load up a bunch of mana into this, you can start damaging people and then way boosting your life total. So that's the point. Sinkhole, just blow up somebody's non-basic land. If that blue player is using a dual land, or they cracked a misty rainforest and grabbed an island, just sinkhole their island. Then they can't obviously cast counter spells or whatnot. So, very useful to have sinkhole every once in a while. Demonic Tutor, I think you know what it does. It lets you go get stuff. It puts it in your hand. It's really simple. Stupor. Target opponent discards a card at random, then chooses and discards a card. So again, you're getting a double discard. Normally a card like this would be kind of crappy, but in a deck with the commander that's in here, you're definitely going to want to have this card. Alright, next up we're going to use Virtus Maneuver. For each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend returns a creature card from their graveyard to their hand. And for each foe, you sacrifice a creature they control. So again, it's a sacrifice engine, but it gets you a creature back from your graveyard. Very useful. Next one we got is Grim Tutor. To tutor. You can see what it does. Then this one was my one major artifact. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard and a creature is in play, return that creature from your graveyard to play at the end of turn. So if somebody else's creature goes into the graveyard, but you have something in the graveyard, maybe because of some of the global discard effects, well then you can use this and just go get it back. You know what I'm saying? You go get your thing back and put it back on the battlefield. It's a really amazing way to get stuff back out. Next card we have is Dark Ritual. It's pretty obvious. It's a mana ramp. You get 3 mana for 1. We got Sudden Spoiling as an instant. Until end of turn, creatures target player controls lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 0/2. So if you have like an entire army coming after you because someone just generated 50 tokens or 1,000,000 tokens, well, if you cast a spell, they can't attack you with that because they're all 0/2s for that turn. So you got a way to deal with that. Next one, this one's great. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a Liliana Planeswalker, which you saw, they're all Liliana, each opponent also discards a card. So if you have Liliana out, you're going to get the double effect for just 2 on an instant. It's really good. Now, we're going to jump into just the artifacts and the non-basic lands. Most of this stuff you might expect to see in a deck like this. We got a coupon card. Makes your spells one less to play. Next was going to be Mind's Eyes for cards draw. You want to be able to draw a card, so if someone else draws a card, you can pay 1. If you do, you can draw a card. So it's like kind of an heuristic study, but not quite as good, but not bad. You got Boots, Hexproof and Aced, Mind Stone, Soul Ring, Thran Dynamo. I think you know what these do. This one was an interesting little ad. You may put a land card from your hand into the battlefield. So he's only cost 2 to get out. I'm not really going to attack with this guy. I'm just going to use him to get mana ramp out of my hand into the battlefield. And you're basically playing with all swamps or some non-basics. So definitely a good card to have. Alright, let's hit up these non-basics. And that should just about wrap up our video. We got Phyrexian Tower. You sacrifice a creature, you can add 2 mana to your mana pool. Good spot to be, especially when you want to sacrifice one of those little snakes or something. You get your 2 mana, so you get some ramp that way. Myriad Landscape allows you to go get basic lands. You definitely want to get those. Very useful. Blighted Fen. Blighted Fen. So, you pay the 4 and a black. Your target opponent sacrifices a creature on a land. You gotta have it in this deck. It needs it as soon as they sacrifice stuff, it goes to your battlefield if Tergrid's out. A lot of people are gonna notice that too, by the way. It's on a land, so they're not as seeing it coming. Add 2 mana to your mana pool. It's just False God, Temple of False God. Mortuary Mire. It allows you to take a creature card from your graveyard and put it top of your library. So if you drop this into play and you got something in your graveyard and you want to go get it back, well then that's one way to do it. Again, blow up somebody's non-basic land. Just to get rid of it. Bajuka Bog. There could be another person playing Graveyard Recursion at the table. So if it's a problem, then you have an option. You can always just choose to exile that person's graveyard. All the graveyards will get exiled, but if you need this, again, it's like a nuke button to get rid of a problem that might be coming up. Next card we got is Shizo, Death Storehouse. You can pay a black and tap it Target legendary creature gains fear until end of turn. Gives a little bit extra to Tergrid if you want to do that, or one of your other legendaries. Stronghold, you can pay 3 and add a black for each basic swamp you control. So it's like a crappier version of Cabal Coffers, but you know, you see where I'm going with that. Definitely a good card to have if you don't have Cabal Coffers out, which you'll see in a second. Next card is going to be Scorched Ruins. When Scorched Ruins comes into play, you sacrifice 2 lands, but you get 4 colorless mana, so it's a quick way to just ramp you up really fast. I mean, this is I don't know why this card is not in everyone's deck. I think I say this on almost every one of these videos. It's 4 colorless, you know. A lot of these cards, it says like 2 and 4 colorless for a 6, and you can tap this 1 land and get the 4 colorless out of it. It's amazing. So we got a Memorial to Folly. You can pay 2 and a black and sacrifice it. Return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So if something goes in your graveyard, you really want it back, by all means, go ahead and use that card. It's on a land. Next we got this one. Again, more destruction of non-basic lands. You're really trying to crimp your other player's ability to actually play the game. I know it's kind of a crappy thing to do in Commander, but that's the kind of deck this is. I mean, look at the Commander. And look what it does. So if you're going to build this deck, you might as well go for broke and start blowing up people's key pieces of their land base so they can't cast things that are useful. So you're probably going to be blowing up lands that produce dual mana with blue in it, because you know where that goes real quick with blue. Alright, of course, you know what Cabal Coffers does. Just got reprinted in Modern Horizons too. So you tap it, you add black to your mana pool for each swamp you control. You have 5 swamps, you pay 2, you get 5 black. Really good card on the land. Alright, so that wraps it up for our Tergrid deck. This is our commander again, Tergrid, God of Fright. Now on the other side, there's a lantern. I don't think you're going to cast the lantern. I don't think anyone's going to do that, but I suppose you could if you really wanted to do that. But the idea here is you're going to cast this side of the card, so obviously. Alright, well guys, I hope you enjoyed this deck build, and you know, by all means, leave some comments in the leave some comments for me. Just like my videos, subscribe to my channel, and I will look forward to making you more deck construction videos for EDH Commander. Bye now.